The first College Football 26 update is officially here. Last night I made a video about things that were coming in the first update. Kind of wish I would have just waited because I didn't expect this update to come today. Now do keep in mind this isn't like a massive title update. This is more of a hotfix update it looks like, but they did address some of the bugs in the game that were bothering a lot of people. The first real big title update is going to be coming very soon, so if you don't want to miss out on that, make sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon on because there should be some really big changes and additions with that update. So they got a quick update out today, which I'm really happy about because there were a few bugs in the game that were just pretty crazy. Even if they were rare bugs, still things you got to get cleaned up. And they did say before the game came out that they would be able to get updates out quicker this year. And I don't really know what determines a quick update versus one of the bigger ones. Typically with big updates, they do have to wait and get approval from Sony and Microsoft. And that's sometimes why we have to wait a little bit longer for certain things to get fixed. But they did say going forward that in terms of gameplay related stuff, they'd be able to get quicker fixes out because of some reason. I just don't remember exactly what it is. And that's what happened today. They did an update that did address some of those rare bugs and some other things that were happening in the game. So let's take a look at what went out today. It says a targeted update is now available on your consoles. And it says we are working on a full campus huddle article for our next title update, meaning the next one's going to be like the first big one. This is not what we would call a typical like massive title update. Those are always going to come with big blog notes. This is just posted on their forums, which they do for the smaller like quick fixes. So let's talk about gameplay. It said that they addressed an issue causing linebackers to run slower than intended when defending running plays. And I didn't really notice this too much myself. I just noticed that sometimes run defense didn't seem very good. So maybe this will address run defense and make it a little bit better. They also addressed an issue where a blocked kick wouldn't play out when using a left-footed kicker. This is something I talked about in yesterday's video. If you had a left-footed kicker and if it was a play where the kick was going to be blocked, the kick just wouldn't play out. So that was a bug that they did address. And then they also addressed the rare issue where you were unable to snap the ball occasionally after inputting specific button combinations. Something else we mentioned yesterday, this was a rare bug, but some people were encountering it, and rare or not, this is just one of those bugs you just absolutely can't have in the game. There was a workaround for it, but if you didn't know the workaround, you were just kind of stuck. So glad that they got that fixed quickly because I would say that was the most pressing thing that you needed to fix quickly. If you can't snap the ball, I mean, you can't even play the game. So even though it was rare from what it seemed like, I mean, I've never run into this personally, but I've also heard other people that have. So glad that they got that fixed. They also addressed an issue where the wide receiver would get a speed boost when calling specific reverse plays. I didn't know anything about this. I haven't even heard anybody talk about this. This is another big one. They did some tuning to reduce the size timing window for perfectly timed stiff arms, and it says we are investigating a more comprehensive fix to better balance the stiff arm mechanic in a future title update. Also talked about this in yesterday's video. The stiff arm by far is the best ball carrier move in College Football 26, which is cool. I mean, stiff arming people is fun. But the problem is you were able to just spam the button when you got anywhere near a defender. And like anything in a football game, timing should matter. If you're going to fake out a defender with a juke or a spin or a hurdle, you should time it right. It shouldn't be something you can just spam and then as soon as you get next to the defender, you just automatically win or, automatically win a high percentage of the time. The timing of your player versus the timing of the defender should matter. And with stiff arming, that really just wasn't the case. You could just spam it and you would win it a high majority of the time. So it sounds like they just made a slight balance here to where you have to time it a little bit better. What was happening, it sounds like, is you were getting perfectly timed stiff arms when you weren't perfectly timing it, and that's why they were successful at such a high clip. So now they should still work about the same. You just have to actually time it right instead of spamming the button. So I think that's fine. Timing needs to matter in a football game. And here's another big one that I know is going to be polarizing, and I'm going to speak on it for a minute. They did some tuning to increase the catch chance for interceptions, and it says we are investigating additional improvements for catch drops in a future title update. So catch drops is definitely one of the things that a lot of people have noticed, and it's not just for defense, also a lot of catch drops for some open receivers. I talked about that. Both of those should be tuned. The problem with interceptions is that you don't want a game where it's just, too many passes are getting intercepted, especially, for the dynasty crowd that want a more realistic experience. I think the way interceptions are kind of working is good in that case if you're playing on Heisman. Obviously, it's supposed to be hard, but you don't want lower rated guys constantly intercepting the ball. Ratings need to matter too. However, in a head-to-head scenario, the interceptions are just being dropped at way too high of a clip. Now, at this point, I don't think anybody's asking for interceptions with the back turn of the ball. Like, we know those days are over. You shouldn't get an interception if your player on the field has no eyes on the ball. That's fine. No one's asking for interceptions where a linebacker's jumping 10 feet in the air. Again, those days are gone. No one's really expecting it. That stuff's not realistic. But what does need to happen is if you have eyes on the ball, especially as a user defender, and you get in position between the receiver and the ball, or you're jumping a route, those need to be caught at a little bit of a higher clip. Again, I'm not even saying every time, but the reality is if you're playing in a head-to-head environment online, you need to feel like you have some control over winning and losing. You play online head-to-head versus another human because you want to outthink them, outsmart them, you want to outplay them and win the game. And as it is, there's already so much stuff in the game that is a dice roll that's out of our control because the majority of the people on the field are controlled by AI. So I can't control if my offensive lineman wins the block versus the pass rusher and vice versa. I can't control if my wide receiver wins the rep versus the DB in man coverage. These are all dice rolls based on ratings, abilities, and other factors. But the little that both sides can control is how you read the field post-snap. So the offensive player can control where he throws the ball unless he gets a wildly inaccurate throw. But for the most part, you control if you're throwing it to an open receiver or a covered receiver. As the defense, you control the defense you put out there. And at that point, you can control where your user defender goes. So if I'm catching on to a tendency that my opponent is liking to throw this specific route in this specific formation, and I get my defender there before the ball gets there, I need to win that play more times than what is currently playing out. Because if you're playing head-to-head, your decisions have to matter at some point. Again, we can only control so much as it is. So the little that we can control needs to matter. Otherwise, why are we even playing head-to-head? We might as well just put the controller down at that point and let the computer play out everything. So if you're constantly throwing the ball at my defender, that I'm getting in position for this interception and he's dropping it the majority of the time, at that point, your decisions are not mattering. You're just allowed to keep making mistake after mistake and there's no consequence for it. So again, when they say they're tuning to increase the catch chance for interceptions, this isn't meaning that they're letting you catch ridiculous interceptions. They're letting you head tap a receiver and snatch the ball with your eyes not on the ball. It's just saying that if you're hitting my defender in the numbers and he's got eyes on the QB, eyes on the ball, and especially if I'm using him and I'm timing the catch, that needs to be rewarded more than it is in this game. As it is, the offense has the most advantages in the game unless you're playing on the road. That's really the only time you don't have an advantage. But otherwise, you can quick snap. You can run no huddle, even the turbo no huddle, which is crazy fast. You have access to so many different plays and all the trickery like options and screens and motions. The defense has to worry about run versus pass and then all the other possibilities that you could have. They have to worry about you potentially audibling, hot routing, flipping a play. And as the defense, you have to call the right coverage. You have to also a lot of times make adjustments once you're on the field to better help your AI defenders be in the right position to make a play. And then when the ball's snapped, you still have to read it right as a user and get to the spot where the opponent wants to go. So if you do all those things right versus an offense that has so many different advantages, it needs to be punished if they do make a mistake repeatedly. Again, I'm not saying everything needs to be an interception, but I've just had multiple games where back-to-back plays, a guy makes the exact same mistake twice. He throws it to the same guy that I know he's going to throw to. I get my guy in position between the receiver and the ball, and it's dropped back-to-back times. At what point is that going to be punished? So I do think they need to tune the increase for interceptions, so I'm glad they did. At the end of the day, if you don't want to throw interceptions, there's literally one simple thing you have to do, and that is not throw to somebody who's covered. If you throw to the open receiver, it can't be an interception. Now again, if it's a 50-50 ball, DB's back's turn, I'm fine with that. Throw that all day. We know that in this game, they've made that more of a possibility. I'm fine with that. That's real football. You can take your shot, especially if you have a tall receiver who's also good. You should be able to take that shot sometimes, but what you shouldn't be able to do is just throw it right at my defender's face who is staring at the ball and the QB the entire play. Now for Road to Glory, they also made some changes here. They reduced the positive/negative impacts of team per play grading events for the Mike and the cornerback. They also increased the positive/negative impacts of user per play grading events for Mike and cornerback as well. Coverage, interceptions, forcing a fumble, touchdowns, etc. I had seen some people mention this, especially for cornerback, because I don't think that many people actually play Mike in the game, but a lot of people play corner. So I have seen people say that something was off with the grading where they were being punished for things that weren't their fault. So great quick fix there. I mean, if you're playing Road to Glory, again, something like that can make you not want to play. So nothing for Dynasty yet, as that's probably going to be in the big title update that's coming. I would imagine probably in a week or two at the latest. That's typically the timeline for EA for how long the game's been out so far. So some of those Dynasty issues that people are waiting on, that should be kind of the next thing that's coming. And also just more gameplay tuning and potential other Road to Glory fixes that they have to get on top of. Now, if you want to know about some other really important game mechanics that you need to be using if you want to win more games versus both the computer and online opponents, make sure you check out this important video right here on the screen.